When Howard Carter, together with Lord Carnarvon, discovered the tomb of Tutankhamun deep in the valley of Luxor in November 1922, no one expected what a shock this event would be for the entire world. Just a few months after the sensational discovery, Lord Carnarvon dies. Officially, it was from blood poisoning after a small cut on his cheek that he got while shaving. However, the blood on his face matched the spot on the pharaoh's cheek, where there was also a mysterious wound. Newspapers around the world immediately began talking about an ancient curse guarding the secrets of the pharaohs. The list of victims began to grow. Arthur Mace, Carter's assistant, suddenly died a year later. George Gould, who visited the tomb, did not survive a fever. And Ron Ember, an Egyptologist, died in a fire before he could escape from his own home. Many seekers of secrets claimed that forces much older than modern science intervened in the matter. Even the children of the excavation participants often died under strange circumstances. One of the most mysterious cases was the incident with radio host Hugh Blunt, who died before he could go on air, where he was planning to talk about the latest discoveries in the Pyramid of Khufu. One after another, strange deaths haunted those who tried to uncover the secrets of the pyramids. James Henry Breasted contracted a deadly infection after a minor cut while working on the construction of the new museum, and photographer Walter Ingram disappeared without a trace on his way to the Sphinx. Sometimes even a simple touch of the ancient walls led to mysterious illnesses that early 20th century medicine was powerless to cure. Mummies often reappeared at excavation sites despite official bans, as if someone or something was urging the researchers to keep digging even deeper. The string of deaths and disappearances began to resemble a tangled quest, in which the pyramid itself became not only a monument but also a trap for those who dared to lift the veil of its secrets. The most remarkable thing was that not a single one of these mysterious cases ever received a clear explanation. It is impossible to trace the exact sequence of events. Some documents simply vanished from the archives, and it seemed as if someone deliberately destroyed certain pieces of evidence. Even decades later, the fear of the curse has not disappeared among Egyptologists. Many refuse to enter the pyramids at dawn or to touch ancient artifacts with their bare hands. And yet, despite all the dangers and unsolved tragedies, researchers are drawn not only by the elusive promise of fame, but also by the desire to understand how these stone giants were erected in the very heart of the desert. After all, behind the deaths often lies a far greater mystery. When the first European archaeologists set foot on the Giza Plateau, they were confronted by gigantic structures, each side measuring over 750 feet, with the main pyramid rising to nearly 500 feet tall. The largest blocks, weighing more than 60 tons, were fitted together with a precision of up to a quarter of an inch. Attempts to determine how the ancient workers, who, according to official records, numbered no more than 20,000, could have raised millions of stone blocks in just a few decades have baffled even 20th century engineers. The technologies known to the ancient Egyptians did not include iron tools or pulleys and hoists capable of supporting 20-ton blocks. In many areas, traces of mystically smooth cuts are still visible, as if the stone had melted under the influence of heat or yielded to some invisible force. None of the surviving papyri explain how slabs were laid perfectly flat at heights of several hundred feet. All the images on the walls only depict scenes of transportation, where people pull ropes and roll blocks over what appears to be a smooth surface, but they do not reveal the main secret at all: how the massive blocks were lifted to such heights and with such precision. In 1883, British engineer Sir William Flinders Petrie was the first to study the remains of the supposed construction ramps and did not find a single surviving inclined ramp that could have withstood prolonged use. Modern calculations show that a ramp sufficient to reach such a height would have stretched for a mile around the pyramid, and no such trace exists in the desert. At the end of the 20th century, French archaeologist Jean-Pierre Houdin proposed the existence of an internal spiral ramp. However, not a single attempt to find it has been successful. Cameras and radars have not detected even the slightest tunnels inside the pyramid that could have served these purposes. The traces of granite working add even more mysteries. The ancient Egyptians worked with quartzite, basalt, and granite as if they had diamond saws or powerful drilling equipment. The collections of the British Museum and the Cairo Museum contain drilled vessels with perfectly smooth walls and carvings of such depth that it is difficult to replicate even with modern tools. American engineer Christopher Dunn stated that some granite slabs show circular drill marks, and in some places the cutting depth exceeds a quarter of an inch per revolution. Figures impossible to achieve with copper tools and manual devices. At the same time, historians continually find references to construction crews who could move multi-ton blocks as if they were feathers. On the southern face of the Great Pyramid of Khufu, marks have been found suggesting that the stones were somehow shifted upward by an unknown method without grinding or causing damage. To this day, none of the experiments conducted by modern science have managed to recreate such rapid and precise placement without the use of cranes, lifting mechanisms, or synthetic materials. And while scientists continue to debate the technologies involved, each new analysis of the stones reveals more and more inconsistencies. Some blocks contain inclusions of rich minerals that are not found in the vicinity of Giza. This means that multi-ton materials were transported over dozens of miles, despite the lack of roads or rivers. All these details come together into a puzzle that no one has been able to solve to this day. And behind the walls of the pyramids, even more mysterious traces of lost knowledge are preserved, traces that modern researchers can only speculate about. Around the middle of the 19th century, a mysterious cavity was discovered inside the Great Pyramid of Khufu, which workers initially mistook for a secret chamber. However, inside there was neither a sarcophagus nor any ornaments, only strange markings on the walls and remnants of a black powder resembling graphite. Later, it was discovered that similar traces could be found in other parts of the pyramid, sometimes at heights of more than 200 feet. They were located in places that would be impossible to reach without special equipment, which, according to the artifacts found, the ancient Egyptians did not possess. In 1960, during one of the restoration projects, British engineers discovered mysterious grooves and recesses inside the so-called Grand Gallery, carved with jeweler-like precision. Some of them match modern mortise joints used for securing stones, but the end of each groove disappears into the solid wall and has no visible exit. After analyzing the gypsum residues in these grooves, experts determined that their composition does not match any known ancient Egyptian binding material, and their melting point is several times higher than that of ordinary construction mixtures. Stone vessels covered with microscopic grooves are often found inside the pyramid. Exactly the same grooves have been found on the granite sarcophagi in the king's chamber. An analysis of the epoxy residues found at the bottom of one of the vessels revealed the presence of resins and chemicals whose composition is closer to industrial adhesives of the 20th century than to the traditional natural resins of antiquity. Such substances could not have been produced under the conditions known from ancient Egyptian workshops. The so-called dolerite hammer deserves special attention. Several specimens are kept in the Cairo Museum. These are perfectly round stone spheres weighing up to 100 pounds, traces of which have been found on the most inaccessible ledges of the pyramids. Their shape and weight suggest that they were not used for chiseling stone, but possibly for special technologies of moving blocks or even as parts of mechanical devices. In 1981, French researchers, while studying drawings inside one of the smaller pyramids, noticed depictions of strange devices resembling modern rollers and complex pulleys. None of these kinds of devices have been found among archaeological discoveries. Yet the shadows and circles on the walls suggest the possibility of working with stone using methods that remain unsolved. After re-examining the composition of the stones in 2003, a group of Japanese scientists recorded unique magnetic properties in some of the blocks. It turned out that electromagnetic waves dispersed differently inside them compared to the surrounding rock. This may indicate that the builders, at the very least, understood the properties of the material better than is commonly believed. Combined with the perfectly symmetrical ventilation shafts, which measurements show are oriented not only to the north and south but also to the precise positions of certain stars, it gives the impression of a much deeper level of engineering knowledge. However, even despite all these traces of lost technologies, most of the interior space of the pyramids remains unexplored. Laser scanners and radio wave sensors have repeatedly detected signals indicating hidden voids, but so far the research team has not been able to access them. It is precisely behind these hidden walls that artifacts or documents may be concealed, ones that could explain where the very knowledge that allowed the ancient builders to achieve the impossible has disappeared to. And when it comes to hidden spaces, researchers are discovering not only voids inside the pyramids but also actual sealed chambers that no one has entered since the time of the pharaohs. When a French expedition brought the first ground-penetrating radars into the Great Pyramid of Khufu in the mid-1960s, engineers were astonished to detect echoes from cavities in places where, according to old blueprints, there should have been nothing but solid masonry. Time and again, the instruments indicated anomalous voids within the walls, but no one dared to open them up. It was only during the Japanese mission in the 1990s that specialists were able to confirm part of the space inside the pyramid remains inaccessible to research. Robots designed specifically to crawl through narrow shafts would get stuck between the stones, and small cameras encountered mysterious barriers installed in the ventilation passages. The most famous case occurred in 2002, when British engineers sent a mini-robot down the so-called southern shaft. It ran into a tiny door with 2 brass pins, which could not be opened either by automation or by force. A year later, the team managed to drill a hole and saw behind the door a second, equally mysterious slab. Behind it was an empty space, the purpose of which is still debated. Even stranger objects have been found in other parts of the pyramid. In the king's chamber, the ventilation shafts go deep into the walls at almost a right angle and end in niches inaccessible to humans. In 1843, the German researcher Karl Richard Lepsius described in his diaries how workers found a small window about 100 feet above the floor, completely filled with debris. After clearing it, the expedition came across a narrow passage leading to a natural niche which contained neither sarcophagi nor decorations, only a layer of black dust and ceramic fragments. In the early 2000s, research continued using thermal imaging cameras, which revealed abnormal temperature fluctuations in certain areas of the pyramid. This indicated possible voids behind the walls. In 2025, Japanese and French engineers using muon tomography detected another large cavity above the Grand Gallery. In terms of volume, it is comparable to a passage nearly 100 feet long, but no one has yet entered the cavity. No entrance to it has been found. Hidden chambers are also found in other pyramids of Giza. At the end of the 19th century, workers in the Pyramid of Menkaure discovered a sealed stone slab behind which was a narrow room with no entrance. There they found broken tools, clay vessels, and remnants of burial equipment. But not a single written mention of the purpose of this secret room has been found. Interestingly, in the Pyramid of Khafre, archaeologists found a long corridor leading to an underground hall whose walls are covered with polished granite slabs. In the 21st century, during restoration, it was discovered that one of the walls is slightly inclined, and behind it is a cavity carefully filled with fine sand. It is impossible to get inside. The masonry is so dense that it resists even modern tools. Both scanning and mechanical examinations repeatedly prove that a significant portion of the pyramid's internal spaces remains hidden behind solid layers of monolithic stone. Some cavities appear as if they were deliberately constructed so that no one could enter them, even with today's technology. Numerous hidden shafts and chambers remain unstudied, and most of the diagrams drawn up back in the 19th century only confirm these suspicions. Almost every Egyptian pyramid contains not only sarcophagi and relics, but also carefully concealed spaces for which no explanation has yet been found. While the world wonders what these chambers and tunnels are hiding, mathematicians and physicists from various countries are analyzing the precision with which these spaces are positioned inside the massive structures. It is precisely because of these invisible rooms that there are speculations about a much more complex geometry and phenomena that continue to astonish even the most skeptical scientists. Delving deeper into the stone labyrinths of Giza, scientists increasingly encountered numbers that simply should not have been known to the inhabitants of ancient Egypt. For example, the length of the base of the Great Pyramid of Khufu is just over 755 feet, which almost perfectly matches the number calculated using pi, the ratio of the perimeter's length to the time it takes the Earth to complete one rotation on its axis. If you measure the perimeter of the base and divide that number by twice the height of the pyramid, you get an unusual coincidence, the value of pi accurate to the 5th decimal place. The precision of the pyramid's face angles amazes not only modern engineers but also experts in astronomy. All four sides of the pyramid are aligned with the cardinal directions, with a deviation of less than 1/5 of a degree, despite the absence of compasses and high-precision instruments. Even today, achieving such architectural precision is difficult without specialized equipment. Inside the pyramid itself, numerous pieces of evidence have been found indicating that the builders possessed remarkable mathematical knowledge. The distances between the central points of the chambers and shafts are expressed in whole inches, and their ratios often precisely correspond to harmonic series. In the late 20th century, American mathematician Robert Bauval established that the distance between the Pyramid of Khufu and the neighboring pyramids is a multiple of major astronomical cycles, including the so-called precessional period of Earth's rotation. According to measurements, the pyramids are arranged in such a way that they form a model of Orion's belt, replicating not only the relative positions but also the proportions between the stars. British engineer Sir William Flinders Petrie calculated that the length of the Great Pyramid is related to the length of the Earth's meridian, and its height corresponds to the radius of our planet in inches if a certain multiplier is used. On the walls and sarcophagi, there are reliefs that precisely divide the space according to the principle of the golden ratio, a number that only became the subject of mathematical study in Europe during the Renaissance. Inside the so-called King's Chamber, the remarkably harmonious proportions between the length, width, and height repeat the ratio of 1 to 2 to 3, which became the foundation of the theory of perfect forms. In the early 2000s, mathematicians from Japan used laser scanning to analyze the internal structure of the pyramid and discovered precise repetitions of proportions between the hidden chambers and passageways. Even the ventilation shafts, drilled for hundreds of feet through multi-ton blocks, match in length with astronomical distances between certain planets, if Egyptian units of measurement are converted into inches. A similar pattern can be observed in other structures of the complex as well. The stones laid in the foundation of the Khafre pyramid are arranged according to the same grid as the small pyramid of Menkaure, and their relative positions can be expressed by trigonometric formulas that were only recorded on papyri several thousand years after the presumed date of construction. All these coincidences have been documented by modern topographers, and the archives of Egyptologists are continually being supplemented with new diagrams where these mysterious numbers are repeated with alarming precision. But the numerical paradoxes do not end there. In certain parts of the Great Pyramid of Khufu, a so-called numerical code was discovered, scratched onto the inner surfaces of the stones. Rows of short notches that perfectly match sequences of prime numbers. The French archaeologist Jean-Pierre Adam described similar symbols in his journals, found on the ceiling of the blue chambers. They form precise geometric shapes and three-dimensional spirals, the construction of which would have required profound knowledge of geometry. While some experts are documenting mathematical phenomena in the dimensions and arrangement of the blocks, others are searching for patterns in the ornamentation and reliefs. However, the deeper researchers delve into the numerical mysteries of the pyramids, the more often it seems that the ancient builders either possessed entirely different sources of knowledge or left a coded message in stone for those who would be able to decipher it. And ahead lie hypotheses that completely overturn our understanding of the purpose of the pyramids. After all, some modern researchers see in them not only tombs but also powerful energy machines. Following the astonishing coincidences in the mathematics of the pyramids, researchers are increasingly turning their attention to striking alternative theories. In the mid-1970s, American engineer Christopher Dunn put forward a hypothesis. The Great Pyramid of Khufu could have served not only as a tomb but also as a giant energy installation. He noticed that the arrangement of the ventilation shafts resembles complex channels through which not only air but also water could circulate, creating vibrations inside. Analyzing traces of salt found on the walls of the king's chamber and signs of melted stone, Dunn suggested that water was deliberately supplied into the pyramid, and as it passed through the narrow channels, it created vibrations, which in turn could initiate the generation of energy. Similar assumptions were made by Russian scientists at the end of the 1990s. While conducting experiments with electromagnetic scanners, they recorded anomalies. Some blocks of the pyramid responded to the radiation more strongly than their neighbors, as if special conductive inserts were hidden inside. Reports from a Japanese expedition in the 21st century noted surges of electrostatic voltage at the top of the pyramid during strong winds. This coincided with accounts from tourists who, over the decades, noticed static electricity discharges when touching the stones. The American inventor Patrick Flanagan was already experimenting with miniature pyramid models back in the 1960s. Inside them, the degradation of organic matter accelerated, and strange effects were observed, such as metallic objects acquiring an electrified coating. Later, the French researcher Antoine Bovis noted similar phenomena. Liquids and plants enclosed within pyramid shapes were preserved for longer, and magnetic fields uncharacteristic of open spaces were recorded inside. In the early 1980s, Soviet physicists led by Alexander Golod built several pyramid-shaped structures in the Moscow region. Inside these structures, deviations in background radiation and accelerated crystal formation in water were observed. A group of scientists established that the granite used in the Egyptian pyramids contains quartz, a mineral known for its ability to generate electricity under pressure. According to this theory, the massive stones could have functioned as piezoelectric generators, converting mechanical vibrations into electrical energy. During the same years, scientists from Germany recorded weak radio pulses and unusual radio frequencies emanating from the upper tiers of the Great Pyramid of Khufu. An experiment was conducted. A group of metal antennas was installed along the faces of the pyramid, and under certain weather conditions, the detection of spontaneous pulses increased. The coincidence of the pyramid's orientation with magnetic north only heightened suspicions that such architecture was not accidental. Supporters of the energy machine hypothesis point to the proximity of Giza's underground water channels, as well as repeated mentions of the pyramid's apex shining in ancient texts. Archaeologists have recorded traces of old reinforcement rods, which were broken off as far back as the 19th century. It is possible that they served as a kind of conductor. Moreover, the shape of the pyramid optimally collects and amplifies electromagnetic impulses, according to a group of French researchers who conducted simulations on supercomputers in the 2000s. Despite the lack of solid evidence, many facts come together to form an intriguing picture. The internal cavities, geological features, and the mysterious behavior of water and air inside the pyramid still raise questions even among skeptical physicists. But perhaps the most astonishing evidence is yet to come. After all, inside the pyramids, artifacts and traces are found that could completely change our understanding of ancient world technologies. For a century and a half, archaeologists, engineers, and ordinary workers exploring the pyramids have come across discoveries that not only don't fit into the conventional historical narrative, but actually cause genuine bewilderment among experts. For example, in 1924, a British expedition discovered a strange cylindrical object made of copper and an unknown alloy at a depth of almost 120 feet beneath the base of the Great Pyramid of Khufu. A chemical analysis conducted 30 years later revealed traces of cobalt and nickel in proportions that would have been inaccessible to ancient craftsmen. At the same time, workers also found pieces of extremely thin wire nearby, soldered in a zigzag shape as if intended for conducting an electric impulse. These artifacts were sent to London, but along the way, some of the finds disappeared, and information about them remained only in the private notes of the archaeologists. A similar story occurred in 1959, when during the restoration of a shaft inside the Pyramid of Khafre, workers stumbled upon a sealed niche containing miniature parts resembling modern bronze gears. Experts from the Cairo Museum who studied the finds noted an unusual precision in their craftsmanship, and on the surface of the parts they discovered microscopic grooves that did not resemble marks left by hand tools. The entire collection was later confiscated without any explanation. In 1991, a Japanese archaeological mission, using an endoscope, discovered not only a void behind the wall of one of the ventilation shafts of the Great Pyramid of Khufu, but also something that was later identified in photographs as a flat plate made of an unclear, glass-like material. At the same depth, fragments of an unknown synthetic substance containing carbon impurities capable of withstanding high temperatures were found. No analogues of this material have been found among Egyptian artifacts. In the late 1980s, a team of French researchers, while studying the sarcophagus in the king's chamber, recorded clear imprints of rounded droplets of solidified metal on the inner surface, resembling aluminum. Analysis showed that the metal content there exceeds 70%. However, the industrial production of aluminum only became possible in the 19th century. In 1946, an American military pilot surveying the Giza Plateau from the air noticed a shiny metallic cylindrical object at the excavation site, which, according to eyewitness accounts, was soon confiscated by the local authorities. Witnesses claimed that the object resembled an engine component, and in terms of size and weight, it was clearly different from anything previously found among Egyptian artifacts. In the 2000s, stone discs with perfectly round holes and traces of mechanical polishing were discovered in the underground chambers of the Pyramid of Menkaure. The artifacts, in both shape and function, resemble parts of modern pumps or fans. Two of these discs are currently kept in the storage rooms of the Cairo Museum, but their origin has not been recognized by official archaeology. In the early 21st century, a group of independent researchers conducted a magnetic analysis of stone fragments brought from one of the hidden chambers. It turned out that some of them exhibit anomalous electrical conductivity along the edges, as if they had been processed using a special technology. In addition, an element made from a highly purified iron alloy was found in one of the ventilation shafts. Such metal could not have been produced in the conditions of ancient forges. Some discoveries, such as ceramic tubes containing traces of glowing powder, have even sparked debates between chemists and historians. The substances found inside do not match any known dye or mineral from Egypt, and in terms of structure, they resemble modern phosphors. All these mysterious artifacts still spark debates and often disappear into the archives of private collections or end up classified as secret. But most importantly, every new discovery from the pyramids, whether fragments of unusual alloys, pieces with jewelry-like craftsmanship, or elements resembling machine parts, raises even more questions and vividly demonstrates that beneath the sands of Egypt so many secrets still lie hidden that any new find could completely overturn our usual understanding of ancient world technologies.